Alright, what's going on, y'all? I'm out here trying to catch some spotted bass, maybe some largemouth in between. But it's quite windy today, so I'm currently in the back of a protected pocket, so there's not much wind on me right now. But with this fall time of year, you might see a bunch of schools of these spotted bass, and that's kind of making me throw some new baits I haven't thrown before, and one of those is going to be the Berkley Krej, which is a new revolutionary bait. It's different than anything else out there on the market. It's a fantastic bait, and many of y'all may not have thrown it or even heard of it. So I'm going to be talking about what this bait is, how it works, and how I use it. But all it is honestly, I call it an upside down jerk bait, because if you see, the body is almost identical to a jerk bait, but the only difference is the bill's facing upwards rather than downwards. So when this bait's in the water, it sinks down, so it's not like other jerk baits that may float. This one sinks, but when you jerk it, it goes up in the water column versus down. That's just going to be a new look that fish may not have seen before. It really excels with forward-facing sonar, of course, but that's most baits on the market nowadays. But I use it without forward-facing sonar, still a fantastic bait, and I think that's just because fish have yet to see it into something different. But what that bait's going to do is it's going to sink down there. When you jerk it, it's going to move upwards in the water column, and then it's going to shoot back downwards when you pause. So when you jerk that bait and you pause it, if you have a fish behind it, that bait's going to shoot back straight into that fish's face, and that's going to oftentimes get you a bite, because that fish is not going to have another choice but to react to that pause in action where it goes straight into their face, and you're going to put fish in the boat that way. Another way this bait really works good is if the fish are schooling, especially higher in the water column or even in shallow water, you can jerk it and reel it kind of fast, and it'll stay up on the water column. You can work it as a top water, which is my personal favorite, which hopefully I can add a clip of what it looks like on the top. It's really erratic, so if those fish are busting and chasing bait real shallow, if you just work that bait erratically on the surface, you're gonna get some big bites. You can also work this bait real shallow, but the Berkley Krej, yes, it exceeds with forward-facing sonar, but it really does well if you just keep moving that bait fast. I do use it kind of in a slower pattern, which I'll show here in a second. But both work. It's just something new and the fish haven't seen. But to get into how I use them, since I'm on a native Titan, I fish shallow a lot since I don't have a big bass boat like a lot of these other people. But fishing shallow, like some road beds that may be shallow, maybe a grass line, whatever it may be, I'll let this bait sink down, and then I'll jerk it twice like a traditional jerk bait like that, but then pause. But keep doing that. So jerk, jerk, pause, jerk, jerk, pause. I don't like to do more than 2 jerks, because if you move that bait too much, it's going to move too high in the water column. But with this method, I like keeping it as close to the bottom as I can. So if the fish are hugging that bottom of the lake, it's gonna stay near them and stay in that strike zone. So just jerk, jerk, pause after you let that bait sink down. And what's that gonna do? It's gonna be resting on the bottom, and then when you jerk it, it's gonna move up in the water column, and then it's gonna sink straight back down. And just that repeated pattern, you'll be surprised how many fish will hit that bait when you do that. Another way I use it is those suspended fish. It's a little bit more difficult without forward-facing sonar, but you can still do it without forward-facing sonar. I don't do it the most, but find those suspended fish and then just steady jerk it and reel it. Not fast enough where it comes on the surface, maybe add a pause in there. What's that going to do? It's going to stay subsurface if you work it slow enough and add pauses. And those fish that don't quite want a topwater bait will oftentimes come up and hit that bait, especially if the fish are moving real fast and feeding up on shad. Alright, my personal favorite with the Berkley Krej, I like to fire this bait out real far, and then I'm going to keep that rod tip up and then when I keep that rod tip up, just slight bounces, and I'm gonna reel it at a steady pace. That bait's gonna stay on the surface of the water, and it's gonna create a very erratic topwater action. A boat just went by, hopefully that sounds not too bad, but that really erratic motion, if those fish are up, aggressive, feeding real fast, it can be the most effective topwater bait I've thrown. I'll show again. So launch that bait out, especially if you see him busting, and then just reel it fast. Like, you'll see those fish, oftentimes they'll miss it, they'll blow up right behind it, but just keep working that bait. One will get it sometimes, and you'll get some nice fish in the boat doing that. Just that erratic, natural looking shad on the surface gets a ton of bites. Like I said, when they're schooling, it does really good. So if you find a big group of spotted bass, you could put a ton of fish in the boat with it. And not only does this work on spotted bass, it works good for smallmouth and largemouth. I actually caught some pretty nice largemouth on this bait doing that first method I said, closer to the bottom, the jerk, and then pause, let it go back. But the Berkley Krej is really taking off as a topwater bait, as just kind of a rising jerk bait. It's something different, something the fish haven't seen. If you haven't thrown one, I recommend it. If you have forward-facing sonar or not, it does well. It's a great lure. Berkley really did a good job. Yes, I'm pretty sure there's some other companies that make something similar, especially out of Japan. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The Berkley Krej is fantastic. I'll try to add a clip of what that erratic topwater action looks like. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If y'all stayed to the end, I hope you liked what you watched and learned something. And maybe the Berkley Krej can go catch you guys some good fish, and you can have some fun on the water with it. But thanks for watching. If you liked it, of course, please consider subscribing and hitting that thumbs up button. But thanks for watching, guys.